Applied Magic by Dion Fortune. Narrated by Matthew Schmitz. Two, some practical applications of occultism. When I first came to the study of occult science, it was extremely hidden and secretive. The various open societies that existed were either purely exoteric and elementary, or else they were really quite bogus. So it was difficult to know where to look for any real teaching. Consequently, unless one were psychic, one was completely debarred from any knowledge. But this is no longer so in the same degree, and the problem remains for many people. Do they want the occult teaching or not? We are so accustomed to think that in order to have any practical knowledge of occultism, one must go apart from the world, and it is not practicable for the vast majority of people to follow that path at all. That meant that a very great many people who could have had great help from this teaching were debarred from pursuing its study, which I think is a pity. When I was training, it was a strenuous affair altogether. The more I see of it, the more I feel that the work of the adept is one thing, and the general giving out of the teacher is another. The feats which are done by the trained gymnast are entirely beyond the scope of the ordinary man. But nevertheless, the same exercises on which the gymnast is trained, not only carried to the same extreme pitch, keep the ordinary man strong and fit when practiced regularly. So I think it is with occultism. If you want to be an adept and do the strong feats of magic, you are equivalent to the gymnast, and this means a very strenuous training. But I think the next application of this work will be the bringing of the teachings, so that they are available for people not able to leave all, whose karma holds them to daily life. It is interesting to note that at the time when the recrudescence of occultism began in the West, about 1875, three movements had their inception: occultism, the spiritualist movement, and Christian Science, with New Thought as its offspring. These are three distinct lines dealing with occult forces. The occultist bases his work on tradition and generally uses ceremonial. The spiritualist is approaching the same ground, but has no tradition and bases his work on experiment. The Christian Scientist has no tradition or experiment, but bases his work on the hypothesis of the powers of the mind. Spiritualism and Christian Science are rule-of-thumb procedures. If one studies the healing movement of Christian Science, one sees that it has a very good method, but its practitioners seldom can explain it. Occultism is the scientific basis of all these movements and can explain the phenomena of these different modes of experience and practice. In that, its value lies. Christian Science and New Thought do yield valuable fruits, but they give no explanation that a thinking person can accept, and yet they get their results. Therefore, find that basis and do not away with the valuable results. I maintain that in the esoteric doctrines, we get an explanation of so much in life that everybody would be richer for having them given. Life is a very different matter if we have a clue to its meaning. Without this, we are like leaves blown in the wind. We do not know where we are or where we are going. We are blind and wandering as best we may, groping our way with no guarantee that we do not fall over a precipice. But if we take the esoteric doctrines, then we see ourselves as part of the great whole. We see our place in nature. We see whence we have come and where we are going, and we see our relationship to the cosmos, and the whole of life opens up. That is what esoteric science can give: a very broad, profound, and practical application of occultism. My experience with many esoteric scientists is this: they make a sort of intellectual study of it, but they do not apply it to practical problems. They are more or less engaged in research work, in studying symbol systems, the Kabbalah, etc., but except as a means for divination, these studies are for them of no practical application to life. Moreover, these divinations are very spurious on the whole and tend to demoralize people's outlook on life. If something good or bad is going to happen to a person shortly, what good does it to tell them so? But they can find the explanation of things in an interpretation of life. When we study the esoteric teachings of evolution, we see a tremendous vista opening up before us. And of course, the belief in reincarnation is implicit in occultism, as is that in thought transference. There we have, I think, one of the most illuminating teachings that can possibly be given to the problems of life. What can any being do in one life to earn either heaven or hell forever? Surely the teaching of reincarnation is a more reasonable one, the going out and returning again, and going out once more into incarnation for further experience. That is to my mind a very wonderful concept of existence. that behind us stretches a long chain of incarnations. We do not remember them because the memory chain is broken, but they are there, and the divine spark is the core of each one of us, round which experience has built up a whole. This constitutes the temperament and capacities of each one of us. That concept gives us a very deep philosophy of life. If the fortunes of life ate blind hazard, then indeed we are most miserable. But if we see that the broad outlines of the spiritual experiences that life brings us are determined by our own soul, we shall begin to see how to take things. Then next comes another question, the great esoteric doctrine of the invisible planes of existence. These teachings tell us what the five senses see or contact does not constitute the whole of existence. This exoteric science can confirm by means of the microscope, etc., but the occultist goes further and says there is a whole kingdom of mind and spirit as well, which you do not see with your physical senses. In these live the great forces which actuate life and its circumstances. In it you will find the key to conditions of life on the physical plane, and you will never find it anywhere else. Such people as Ku are manipulating these invisible forces successfully. If we understand these conditions, we shall be free. We shall then be able to work with these forces and manipulate them ourselves. But we can manipulate them only within very definite limits. Christian Science sets no limits, but if we watch the results they obtain, we can see that there are limits. There are certain things you are wise not to meddle with. The occultist does not try to dominate nature, but to bring himself into harmony with these great cosmic forces and work with them. You can see an illustration of this if you watch the Thames barges pushing off when the tide is on the run. They are taking advantage of their knowledge of the tides, and the river does the rest. With us in life, we should have the same knowledge and wisdom. We ought to understand these natural laws of the unseen. They are natural laws, and there is nothing spooky about them. We can make life a very different thing if we do understand them. Of course, there are certain conditions we must accept that are the fruits of karma, but I do not want you to take karma in the crude way in which it is sometimes put forth. It is not a question of murder for murder, that if you steal from a person in this life, that same person will steal from you in the next. It is not as simple as that. It means that something in your nature has got to be realized and changed so that you shall be in harmony. As long as that particular factor is in your nature, it will precipitate a similar sort of trouble in your life. Errors of intention, deliberate wrongdoing are usually paid for in future lives. You may get away with it in this life. We have all seen the wicked flourish like a green bay tree, but the effect of that goes on. It is put down to your account, and in due time, you have got to pay. But payment is always in spiritual values. You learn that you have got to make certain adjustments, and when you have done this, the pressure eases up, and you are free. So point by point, we gain character and equilibrium. We win our freedom by learning the lessons of life forces on us, and if we refuse, they become more and more drastic. When people have arrived at a certain degree of development, they are more sensitive and have more spiritual force, and so their problems are more acute. The soul may have decided to go rapidly on and brings down in a concentrated form all the karma due. Trouble seems always to come down on this soul, and through an incarnation of trouble, the soul is purified, and then the next incarnation opens up free of these conditions. A single incarnation does not furnish us with a due, but leaves us with a sense of injustice. But if we see all our past lives stretching out, we see differently. We should always look at things in the light of 3 lives, and we can achieve our purposes in 3 lives too. We are making the conditions for our next life now, though in the present we have to take all or part of the karma left from our last one. Some people say, surely one life is trying enough, but there is another way to look at it. If we average out our troubles against the long aeons of all our lives, they take on a different proportion. A great sense of freedom comes to the soul when the actual realization comes of what is going on, and that this incarnation is but an incident in its career. We cannot give anybody that freedom by simply explaining the logical grounds, but a sudden realization comes of something that has been before, and this causes a great alteration of life's values. Again, if we inspect our life's problems, we may find it may be because we are working things out rapidly and developing fast. We say, this is the material condition that afflicts us, therefore we needed it, and we must learn the lessons it came to give. We try to interpret the spiritual significance of this experience. Let us develop our souls by meditation on it. When the soul has acquired this quality or learnt the lesson that it needed to learn, Then the karmic burden is lifted. When people tackle their conditions, they do not change until the freedom is won. We think we would be happy if only certain things were changed, but no, the conditions are in ourselves, and we would only bring other similar conditions back. When I was working in a nerve clinic, we saw this happen over and over again. The same son of trouble kept recurring in the same life. There was one woman who had been attacked by tramps 3 or 4 times in her life. This does not happen to everyone in the ordinary course of things. Or again, a woman may be continually falling under the power of a bully and be treated with cruelty. First a father, then a husband, and then in her work. We see one particular form of trouble recurring again and again in one person's life. There must be something which determines the recurring experience. If we, most of us, look back through our own lives, we can see this to some extent at least. There must be some prominent factor in our own makeup which draws from the invisible forces. The only way to deal with these is by changing your character, by meditation, by building thought forms, or by deliberately destroying what we call the thought forms, which are the channels of the undesirable things towards you. These are the practical applications of occultism, and we do not need to be adepts to apply these. We are making thought forms one way or the other all the time. Our thoughts not only influence us, they form channels of ingress and attract the corresponding forces in the cosmos itself. If you surround yourself with hate thoughts, you will be attracting a son of cosmic hate to yourself. The occultist has a system of labeling these forces. He works all these things out. We have such a system in the Kabbalistic tree of life, and the beliefs underlying it can be very valuable in life. They teach the tremendous power of mind and the strict limits in which it works, with which we can do so much. These doctrines should leaven thought more and more. The Theosophical Society has done a big work in this way, but its appeal has been chiefly to the unorthodox and the rebel. This is a great loss because these teachings should be and can be presented in such a way that they do not estrange the trained mind, which in pure science is indispensable. Modern physics is coming completely round to the occult teachings. The things that Blavatsky said and was laughed to scorn for are now becoming a matter of pure physics. There are great applications of these things which must be made. They should be applied to sociology, to the administration of the prison and the asylum, where the thought forms set up reinfect people unless we neutralize them. We can consider its practical applications to medicine, of which it has the only real keys. If you deal with a man as body only, it is very unsatisfactory. Equally, if we take the orthodox view and deal with man as a spirit only, we are not doing him justice. Auto-intoxication and sin are different. Man is a fourfold being, and you must deal with him as such. You must discern on which level the trouble originates. The life forces of the spiritual level are the real keys to the whole problem, and these life forces are translated through the intellect and the understanding and brought down the planes. These are some of the esoteric teachings by which anyone can profit. I think the great need of occult secrecy is mainly past, but some is still necessary. Partly because a group mind is necessary for some forms of practical occultism, and this has to be conserved and not dissipated as is done if a thing is common property and knowledge, and also to safeguard individuals against popular prejudice. Madame David Neal, in her books about Tibet, has told us that there is no secrecy about the teaching of the lamas and the inner wisdom there. The things that are kept secret are the practical methods of training their students. She herself, in her books, has given out many teachings which are important keys to the understanding of many occult doctrines. There are no mysteries about the teachings, but only about the practical methods with which people could do harm. So we see that the practical work of occultism can be done only by trained minds and requires a high degree of training, but the principles can be most valuable, and the more these are given out, the better.